The massive alien research station Nexus Prime floated in the void between two dying stars. For 3 centuries, it had been the crown jewel of the Galactic Coalition's scientific achievements. Its quantum processors could simulate entire galaxies. Its biolabs could create new life forms, and its energy cores could power a dozen worlds. Today, everything was failing. Commander Vex of the Altarian High Council stared at the cascading error messages flooding his holographic displays. Red warnings blinked across every surface of the command center. The station's advanced AI systems, built with technology from 12 different species, were shutting down one by one. "Status report," Vex demanded, his 4 arms working frantically across multiple control panels. "Sir, the primary quantum matrix has collapsed," reported Chief Scientist Kale, a tall, blue-skinned researcher whose species had invented faster-than-light communication. "The backup neural networks are also failing. We're losing life support." On decks 7 through 15, the irony was bitter. They had called this emergency meeting to discuss the primitive human problem, how to deal with the newest members of the Coalition who still used ancient technologies like mechanical gears, chemical reactions, and electrical circuits. Now their own superior systems were dying, and they had less than 6 hours before the station's orbit decayed into the nearest star. "What about the escape pods?" asked Dr. Nix, the station's chief medical officer, quantum-controlled. "They're not responding either," Kale replied, his voice trembling. "The emergency beacon won't activate. Even the basic communication arrays are down." Vex felt his confidence crumble. Every solution they tried required the very systems that were failing. Their technology was so advanced, so interconnected, that when it broke, nothing worked. They had built themselves into a corner of complexity. "Sir," a young technician interrupted, "there's one possibility. The human maintenance worker, Jack. He's been working on the lower levels with some kind of primitive repair equipment." The command staff exchanged glances. Humans were barely tolerated in the Coalition. Their technology was considered laughably outdated. They still used tools made of metal and wire, machines that needed physical input, and devices that could function without computer control. "A human?" Vex's voice carried clear disdain. "What could one of them possibly do that our best scientists cannot?" "With respect, sir," the technician continued, "his systems are still working. While our quantum tools have failed, his mechanical equipment continues to function." Through the viewing port, the twin stars seemed to grow larger. The station was definitely falling toward them. In the distance, Vex could see the distortion fields that marked the edge of the star system. There. Last chance for rescue signals to reach Coalition space. "Fine," Vex said finally. "Bring the human here. We have nothing left to lose." Minutes later, Jack entered the command center. He was average height for a human, wearing a simple work uniform covered in grease stains. In his hands, he carried a metal toolbox that looked ancient compared to the sleek technology surrounding them. "You wanted to see me?" Jack asked, his voice calm despite the chaos around him. "Our systems have failed," Vex explained quickly. "We need to restore basic functions, life support, communications, navigation. Can your ... methods help?" Jack set down his toolbox and looked around the command center. While everyone else saw failure, he saw opportunity. These aliens had built everything to depend on their quantum computers. But underneath all that advanced technology, the basic physics remained the same. Power still flowed through circuits. Mechanical systems still moved through physical connections. Air still flowed through pipes and vents. "Maybe," Jack said simply, "but I'll need access to your maintenance shafts and mechanical backup systems. Every station has them, even if you've forgotten they exist." "Mechanical backups?" Kale looked confused. "We eliminated those decades ago. They were ... inefficient." Jack smiled slightly. That's your first problem. When you make everything depend on one type of system, you're putting all your eggs in one basket. He opened his toolbox, revealing an array of simple tools, wrenches, wire cutters, electrical meters, and other devices that worked through direct physical manipulation. These are your solutions? Vex asked incredulously. Metal tools? Sometimes. The old ways work when the new ways fail, Jack replied. He picked up a simple multimeter, a device that could measure electrical current without any computer assistance. Let's see what we're really dealing with here. As alarms continued to blare, and the station continued its deadly fall toward the twin stars, Jack began the first steps of what would become known throughout the galaxy as the human miracle. The day primitive technology saved the most advanced space station ever built. Asterisk. Jack followed the maintenance maps that most of the alien crew had forgotten existed. These were physical charts, printed on actual paper and stored in emergency lockers. While the digital maps were inaccessible due to the system failures, these old-fashioned backups still worked perfectly. This way, Jack said, leading commander. Vex and Chief Scientist Kale through a narrow corridor lined with pipes and cables. Your station has good bones. The builders put mechanical systems throughout the structure, but your people covered them up with fancy computer controls. The corridor opened into a vast mechanical room that Vex had never seen before, despite living on the station for 8 years. Massive pumps moved air and water throughout the station. Thick power cables carried electricity to every section. Physical gauges showed pressure, temperature, and flow rates, all without needing a single computer. Incredible, Kale whispered. I had no idea this existed. Most modern engineers don't, Jack said, pulling out his multimeter. You got so focused on making everything smart that you forgot the basics. He touched the device's probes to a power cable and nodded at the reading. Good news. You still have electricity flowing through the main lines. Your quantum systems failed, but your basic power generation is mechanical. Jack moved to a large control panel covered in dust. Unlike the sleek touchscreen interfaces throughout the rest of the station, this panel had physical switches, analog, dials, and manual overrides. He wiped away years of neglect and began testing each system. Life support first, he said, flipping several switches. Immediately, the sound of air circulation increased throughout the station. Your fans and pumps are controlled by physical switches down here. The computer systems upstairs just send signals to these mechanical relays. But how do we restore communications? Vex asked desperately. We need to send a distress signal before we fall into the star. Jack examined a large communications array panel. The sophisticated quantum transmitters were dead, but he found something else, an old emergency transmitter that worked on simple radio frequencies. It was considered obsolete technology, installed decades ago and forgotten. This radio still works, he said, connecting his electrical meter to test its circuits. It's not fancy, but it can send a basic SOS signal across the system. Radio waves? Kale looked confused. Those travel at light speed. It will take hours for any signal to reach coalition space. Better than no signal at all, Jack replied pragmatically. He began connecting wires and adjusting physical dials on the transmitter. Sometimes slow and steady wins the race. While working, Jack explained his philosophy to the watching aliens. You see, your problem is that you made everything too smart. Every system depends on every other system. When your main computer brain got sick, everything connected to it got sick too. He gestured to the mechanical controls around them. But these simple systems work independently. This pump doesn't need to talk to that generator. This radio doesn't need permission from a quantum computer to send a signal. They just do their jobs. Jack activated the radio transmitter, and a steady beeping sound filled the mechanical room. the universal SOS signal broadcasting across space. It was primitive compared to the station's normal quantum communications, but it worked. Now, for navigation, Jack said. We need to stop falling into that star. The navigation system seemed completely digital, but Jack found the mechanical heart underneath. Physical thruster controls that had been automated, but could still be operated manually. The station had dozens of small rockets for orbital adjustments, each with its own mechanical firing system. Asterisk. I can't calculate a complex orbit, Jack admitted, but I can fire thrusters to push us away from the star. Sometimes simple solutions work better than complex ones. He began manually firing thrusters in sequence, using visual references through the viewports to judge their direction and speed. It was like steering a massive ship by feel rather than computer guidance. The aliens watched in amazement as their station slowly began to change course. The gravitational pull is still strong, Vex observed, but we're no longer falling directly into the star. Every minute we buy gives more time for rescue, Jack said, continuing his manual piloting. Your people will figure out what went wrong, with the computers eventually. My job is to keep everyone alive until then. As the immediate crisis stabilized, the aliens began to see their station differently. Underneath all their advanced technology lay a foundation of simple, reliable mechanical systems, systems that humans understood instinctively because they had never abandoned such approaches. How did you know all this would work? Cale asked. Jack smiled, wiping grease from his hands. Because I've seen complicated systems fail before. When they do, you fall back on what's simple, what's proven, and what doesn't need a computer to think for it. Asterisk 2 hours later, the immediate crisis had stabilized, but Jack knew they weren't safe yet. The SOS signal was broadcasting. The station had stopped falling toward the stars, and life support was running on manual systems. However, the main computer networks remained completely dead, and without them, the station couldn't function for long. We need to find out what caused the failure, Jack said, studying a diagnostic panel that showed the station's basic status through analog gauges. This wasn't just a random breakdown. Something specific went wrong. Dr. Nix, the medical officer, approached with troubling news. Jack, we're starting to see strange symptoms in some of the crew. Headaches, confusion, memory problems. It's affecting the species with the most advanced neural implants first. Jack frowned. Neural implants? You mean computer chips in your brains? Standard for most coalition species, Vex explained. They enhance our thinking, provide instant access to databases, allow direct mental control of our technology. Very efficient. And they're all connected to the station's network? Jack asked. Of course. The integration allows for seamless operation of complex systems. Jack felt a chill of understanding. That's not just a computer failure. That's some kind of attack. Something is deliberately targeting your network systems, including the ones in your heads. He led them to the central computer core, a massive chamber filled with quantum processors and crystalline data storage units. Everything looked normal from the outside, but Jack's simple electrical testing equipment told a different story. Look at this, he said, showing them readings on his multimeter. Your quantum systems aren't just offline. They're actively fighting against each other. Something is making them generate interfering signals. Cale examined the readings with growing alarm. If you're right, then every network system on the station is being sabotaged from within. But what could do that? Jack continued his investigation, using basic tools to trace power flows and signal paths. What he found was disturbing, a pattern of interference that wasn't random, but deliberate and intelligent. It's a virus, he concluded, but not the kind that attacks software. This attacks the quantum layer itself, the physical foundation of how your computers think. That's why your antivirus systems can't stop it. They're looking for the wrong type of problem. Impossible, Vex protested. Quantum viruses are theoretical. No one has ever successfully created one. Someone has now, Jack replied grimly. And whoever did it understands your technology better than you do. They know that all coalition systems work the same way, use the same quantum principles, connect to the same networks. One virus can attack everything at once. The implications were staggering. If this virus could spread, it could cripple the entire galactic coalition. Every advanced species would find their technology turned against them. Only the most primitive systems would continue to work. Can you stop it? Cale asked desperately. Jack studied the quantum core with his simple instruments. Maybe, but not by fighting it on its own level. Your quantum systems are too complex for me to understand, but I might be able to isolate them. His plan was elegantly simple. Using manual controls and mechanical switches, Jack began physically disconnecting the quantum processors from each other and from the station's basic systems. He couldn't cure the virus, but he could quarantine it. You're cutting our processing power by 90%, Vex observed as Jack worked. Better than 0%, Jack replied. We're going to run this station like humans would, with simple computers that do basic jobs, mechanical backups for everything important, and human judgment instead of artificial intelligence. It was delicate work. Each disconnection had to be done carefully to avoid damaging critical systems. Jack used wire cutters, manual switches, and physical circuit breakers, tools that the virus couldn't influence because they weren't connected to any network dot as he worked. More crew members began showing symptoms of neural implant interference. The virus was trying to spread through their brain-computer connections. Dr. Nix had to sedate several people whose implants were causing severe pain. We need to get those implants offline too, Jack realized. The virus is using them as transmission points. Impossible, Dr. Nix protested. Our people depend on their neural enhancements. Without them, some species can barely function in modern society. Better than letting the virus fry their brains, Jack said bluntly. Sometimes you have to take a step backward to survive. By the end of the third hour, Jack had successfully isolated the quantum systems. The virus was contained, but so was most of the station's advanced capability. They were running on backup systems, mechanical controls, and basic electronics, essentially operating at early 21st century human technological levels. We're alive, Vex said, but we're helpless. How do we get home? How do we warn the coalition about this threat? Jack looked out at the distant stars and smiled grimly. The same way humans always have. We figure it out as we go. Asterisk, with the immediate crisis contained, Jack faced a new challenge, getting the station operational using only primitive technology. The alien crew watched in fascination as he began improvising solutions with whatever materials he could find. First, we need better communication, Jack said, examining the station's construction. Your emergency radio works, but it's weak. We need something stronger to reach coalition space quickly. He led a team to the station's outer hall, where massive quantum communication arrays sat dead and useless. But Jack wasn't interested in the sophisticated equipment. He wanted the basic metal structures that held them up. These support towers are perfect, he said, pulling out a simple measuring tape. We can use them as antenna elements for a more powerful radio transmitter. The aliens watched in amazement as Jack began reshaping their advanced communication array into something much simpler but more reliable. Using basic tools, hammers, wire strippers, and manual welding equipment, he created a large radio antenna array. But how do we generate enough power? Asked Cale. The quantum power systems are offline. Jack grinned. Your station has 3 fusion reactors. The computer controls are down, but the reactors themselves are purely mechanical at their core. We just need to operate them manually. This required training alien engineers to do something their people hadn't done in centuries: run technology by hand instead of computer control. Jack showed them how to read analog gauges, how to adjust controls based on visual and audio feedback, and how to make decisions without artificial intelligence. "It feels so primitive," one engineer complained as he manually adjusted reactor. "Coolant flows. Primitive works," Jack replied. "Your ancestors built these mechanical systems as backups for a reason. They knew that sometimes simple is better than smart." With more power available, Jack's radio transmitter became strong enough to send clear signals across the star system. But their messages brought disturbing news from the Coalition. Similar quantum viruses were appearing throughout Alliance space. Advanced civilizations were falling back to basic technology levels as their networked systems failed. "It's a coordinated attack," Vex realized as they received reports. "Someone is trying to cripple the entire Coalition." "And they're succeeding," Jack said grimly. But they made one mistake. They assumed that advanced civilizations can't survive without advanced technology. Jack began organizing the station crew differently. Instead of specialists who each controlled one complex system, he created teams that understood multiple simple systems. Engineers learned to be mechanics. Scientists learned to be technicians. Everyone learned to work with their hands instead of just their minds. Asterisk. "This is inefficient," Dr. Nix complained as she manually monitored life support systems that had previously run themselves. "But it's resilient," Jack pointed out. "When one person gets sick or hurt, others can take over their job. When one system breaks, we can fix it or work around it. Your old way was faster, but fragile." The real breakthrough came when Jack discovered that the station's manufacturing bays could still function mechanically. The quantum fabricators were dead, but underneath them were basic 3D printers, metal shops, and chemical processors that could work without computer control. "We can make replacement parts," Jack explained excitedly. "And not just for our own systems, for any coalition ship that needs help." He organized production of simple but reliable technology: radio transmitters, mechanical tools, basic electronics, and emergency equipment. Everything was designed to work without quantum computers, neural networks, or artificial intelligence. Word spread quickly through Coalition space. Ships with failing quantum systems began heading toward Nexus Prime, now serving as a repair station for primitive technology. Jack found himself teaching alien engineers techniques that human mechanics had used for generations. "Why does this work so well?" asked Kale, watching Jack repair a damaged thruster using nothing but basic tools and mechanical principles. "Because it's based on physics, not programming," Jack explained. "Gravity works the same way, whether you have a quantum computer or not. Metal still conducts electricity. Gears still transfer force. The universe doesn't care how smart your technology is. It only cares whether you understand the basic rules." As more ships arrived seeking help, the station became a hub of activity. Alien crews learned human-style engineering, working with manual tools, making repairs that would last, building systems that could function independently. "We're becoming more like humans," Vex observed, watching his crew work with their hands instead of their minds. "No," Jack corrected. "You're becoming more like engineers. Humans just never forgot that sometimes the best solution is the simplest one." The transformation was remarkable. Within days, Nexus Prime had evolved from the Yalavoff, Coalition's most advanced research station, into its most practical repair facility. And throughout the galaxy, the lesson was spreading: when high technology fails, low technology prevails. 3 weeks after the crisis began, Coalition High Command finally arrived at Nexus Prime. Their flagship's quantum systems had partially failed during the journey, forcing them to rely on the backup mechanical systems that most crews had forgotten existed. Admiral Rex, the coalition's highest military commander, stepped aboard the station, expecting to find chaos and failure. Instead, he discovered a thriving operation where aliens and humans worked side by side, maintaining systems that actually functioned better than before. "This is impossible," Rex said, staring at the bustling repair base. "Your reports claimed that all advanced systems had failed, yet this station is more active than ever." "The advanced systems did fail," Rex explained, leading the Admiral through the transformed station. "But we learned to work without them. Jack taught us that sophisticated doesn't always mean better." They found Jack in the main engineering bay, teaching a group of young alien technicians how to repair quantum drives using basic mechanical principles. Instead of replacing failed quantum components, they were bypassing them entirely and using simpler alternatives. "The quantum flux regulator is broken," Jack was explaining, "but we don't need it. We can control the drive output with this mechanical throttle system. It's not as precise, but it's reliable, and we can fix it anywhere in the galaxy." Admiral Rex watched in amazement as sophisticated alien engineers struggled to understand concepts that human mechanics took for granted: how to test circuits with simple meters, how to repair systems without computer diagnostics, how to build things that would work even when the power went out. "You've turned them into primitives," Rex said to Jack during a private conversation. "I've turned them into survivors," Jack replied. "Your people became so dependent on their smart machines that they forgot how to think for themselves. When the machines stopped working, they were helpless." Rex examined the station's operational reports. Despite using primitive technology, Nexus Prime was actually running more efficiently than before. Systems broke down less often, repairs were completed faster, and the crew could handle problems without waiting for computer analysis. "But what about the quantum virus?" Rex asked. "Has it been eliminated?" "Not eliminated," Jack said. "Contained. We cut it off from the systems it needs to spread. It's still in there, trying to break out, but it can't affect mechanical systems or simple electronics." Jack led Rex to a sealed chamber where the infected quantum processors continued to run in isolation. Through thick, transparent walls, they could see the crystalline components flickering with chaotic patterns as the virus consumed itself. "We're studying it," Jack explained, "trying to understand how it works so we can develop better defenses. But the real defense is diversity, not putting all our technology in one quantum basket." The breakthrough had come from an unexpected source. Dr. Nix, working with human medical techniques, had discovered that the quantum virus was actually a form of artificial life, a digital organism that fed on quantum coherence and reproduced through network systems. "It's brilliant in a terrifying way," Dr. Nix explained to the Admiral. "Whoever created this understood that our entire civilization had become one giant connected system. Attack the connection method, and you can paralyze everything at once. Then, how do we fight back?" Rex demanded. "We don't," Jack said simply. "We adapt. We build systems that don't depend on quantum networking. We maintain mechanical backups for everything important. We train people to work without artificial intelligence helping them." This wasn't the answer Rex wanted to hear. "You're asking U.S. to abandon centuries of technological progress. I'm asking you to remember that progress isn't always about complexity," Jack replied. "Sometimes progress means building things that actually work when you need them most." Over the following months, the Nexus model spread throughout Coalition space. New ships were built with hybrid systems, quantum computers for complex calculations, but mechanical controls for critical functions. Advanced civilizations began teaching their children basic engineering alongside quantum physics. Humans, once dismissed as primitive, became teachers and consultants throughout the galaxy. Their understanding of simple, reliable technology proved invaluable for rebuilding a civilization that had grown too dependent on complexity, that the quantum virus never fully disappeared, but it became containable as the coalition learned to build systems that could function independently. More importantly, they learned the human lesson that Jack had tried to teach from the beginning. The best technology, Jack said in his final report, isn't the most advanced technology. It's the technology that works when everything else fails. Sometimes that means using quantum computers and artificial intelligence. Sometimes that means using a hammer and a screwdriver. The trick is knowing which tool fits the job. The crisis had ended, but it had changed the galaxy forever. The age of pure quantum dependence was over. In its place came the age of hybrid systems, mechanical backups, and human-style engineering resilience. And in workshops throughout coalition space, alien engineers learned to solve problems the way humans always had, with simple tools, practical knowledge, and the understanding that sometimes the old ways work best.